Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So, welcome to this session of Lake Shots, wherein we'll discuss and analyze certain important judgments on criminal procedure as per the Indian law. So, today we'll discuss the case laws as well as related laws. So, this is an initiative of Lake Shots. So, Lake Shots is an initiative to make legal discussions, legal news, legal updates more interesting. So, today I have with me Avinav Sharma. He's a practicing lawyer in India. So as far as my introduction is concerned, I'm a lawyer based in Kathmandu, Nepal. So I basically practice corporate laws, but since Avinav wanted to discuss certain criminal issues, criminal law issues, so we have, discussed this. So I hope I'm audible to everyone. So I'll just pass on to Avinav to start introduction and also give us the basic overview of the discussion.
Yes, thank you, Kailash. First of all, welcome everyone. Uh, so let's start with the basic flow of a criminal trial, a criminal process, or a criminal proceeding. Now, it's important. I mean, this is a very simplified flow of a criminal proceeding, I would say. I mean, a lot of people would say that these things also happen in a normal criminal trial or happen in a criminal proceeding. I understand there will be lots of ifs and buts, but this is just a simplified overview so that you are able to relate these judgments to some of the relevant sections of criminal procedure. Now, let's say an offense takes place. The first duty of of every person is to inform the police that a particular offense has taken place. So that concerned person will go to his local police station, inform the police. Police will in turn register a first information report on his complaint, oral or verbal. Once an FIR is registered, the case is marked to an investigating officer. Investigation starts from that point. The moment an FIR is registered, criminal machinery, I would again say, I mean, these words you'll find in almost all the law books, all the good books on criminal procedure. The moment a first information report is registered, criminal machinery sets into motion. The case is marked to an investigating officer who will now investigate the offense. He will do lots of things. I will not again go into the duties or the things which an investigating officer can do. Once he investigates, it will culminate into a final report or a charge sheet or a closure report. That depends what he finds during the investigation under section 173 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. The magistrate, this final report or the challan or the charge sheet is submitted before the magistrate, the concerned jurisdictional magistrate. The magistrate takes cognizance, issues process or summons to the accused who are charge sheeted in that final report. Mind you, the final report is an opinion. It's an opinion of the investigating officer that these people are accused and have to be put on trial. Then subsequently bails and the accused persons will come before the court and apply for bail. And subsequently charges will be framed against them. The moment charges are framed, the trial starts. So definition of when does a trial start is when the charges are framed. So this is a flow of a trial, and then subsequently, so a full-fledged trial would be there, and after that acquittal conviction. Now this is just a simplified flow of a trial. There'll be lots of ifs and buts, and again repeat. So let us now focus on the judgments, the important judgments which we feel are relevant. I mean, we have just 1 hour with us. We will not be able to cover all the judgments of the Code of Criminal Procedure, but the important ones which I feel you must know as a criminal lawyer, as a practicing lawyer, as a student, as a criminal student, as a criminal law student. So the first judgment would be, Kailash, if you could show that judgment, the first one.
Yeah, I've shown.
Now this is Kirti, this is the second one.
Okay.
Yes, Lalita Kumari. So Kailash will give a brief of what Lalita Kumari said. I mean, what the Honorable Supreme Court in Lalita Kumari said. So I'll hand over to Kailash. I'll of course pitch in when the time comes. I'll pitch in, not an issue.
Sure. So, to begin with the basic process, like Avinav said, whenever something happens, so first procedure is to file an FIR. But there had been certain issues involving FIR where, police were reluctant to file an FIR due to various reasons. So this is one of the important cases that discusses about, how filing of FIR is important, and why should police, in certain cases, should file FIR without any preliminary investigation. So I'll start with the case citation. So it's Lalita Kumari versus Government of UP and others, 2014 to SCC 1. So the basic brief facts of the case was the petitioner, a minor girl, was kidnapped by local goons, and her father went to the police station to lodge an FIR, which police refused. So the father further went to the superintendent of police, and under his direction of an FIR was registered, but even after registering, no investigation was taken. So the petitioner filed a writ petition under Article 32 before the Supreme Court of India. So the issue was whether a police officer is bound to register a first information report, or upon receiving any information that is relevant to a commission of a cognizable offense under Section 154 of the CRPC. So Section 154 of the CRPC was into consideration, and so the court held that the Supreme Court observed that registration of FIR is mandatory under Section 154 if information discloses commission of a cognizable offense and no preliminary inquiries to be done in such cases. So I hope everyone is aware about what a cognizable offense is. Abhinav will tell you in detail about cognizable offense.
Yes. Again, I will not go deep into what a cognizable and a non-cognizable offense is, but you have to understand cognizable offense is an offense where the police can arrest without a warrant or orders of the magistrate. Number one. Secondly, you will have to look at your first schedule of the code where all the offenses are mentioned and whether they are cognizable or not cognizable, non-cognizable. And sometimes what happens is that the police files a charge sheet under a special act. So provisions of a special act. For instance, sometimes you will have other acts referred to in the charge sheet. So you will have to refer to those acts to see whether those offenses are cognizable or non-cognizable. And then you will decide that, okay, this is the thing. Now, important part is in a if I simplify it for everyone, cognizable offenses, largely I'm saying, again, there are ifs and buts, many conditions attached to these definitions. Cognizable offenses are largely serious offenses wherein police action is important. You have to arrest that person, otherwise you will not be able to prevent the commission of a crime. So that power is given to the police so that it readily goes and arrests an accused and not wait for the orders of the magistrate. Very simplified version: serious offenses, largely serious offenses; cognizable offenses, less serious offenses, non-cognizable offenses. So Lalita Kumari in this case said that if an information comes to the police and that information discloses a cognizable offense, police is bound to register a first information report and no preliminary inquiry has to be done. Now Kailash can continue. Yes.
Right. So one of the considerations, as to why FIR were not registered by the police was, there was this misunderstanding or the misinterpretation of the law, which said that the Supreme Court has this specific observation, which I'm going to read it for you. So the registration of FIR under Section 154 of the Code and arrest of an accused person under Section 41 are two entirely different things. It is not correct to say that just because an FIR has been registered, it would require arrest of the accused and thereby leading to loss of his reputation, and it should not be allowed by this court to hold that registration of FIR is not mandatory to avoid such inconvenience to some person. So the remedy lies in strictly enforcing the safeguards available against arbitrary arrests made by the police and not in allowing the police to avoid mandatory registration of FIR when the information discloses commission of a cognizable offense. So this was also an important consideration as to when police used to be very reluctant in registering an FIR.
Yes. Yes. May I say something,
Sure,
Kailash?
sure.
Yes, yes. Couple of important points. If you must read Lalita Kumari, I mean, you cannot rely on this small session to say that you've understood Lalita Kumari. Must go, open up Lalita Kumari, read it line by line, and you will have to read it many a times. I'll tell you, even during your criminal career. Now, important parts: information to the police, discloses a cognizable offense, mandatory registration of FIR. If the if the police feels that the offense does not disclose a cognizable offense, then yes, and demands it demands a preliminary inquiry, that the police will do that preliminary inquiry. After doing that preliminary inquiry, if yes, it's a cognizable offense, yes, you have to register an FIR. If no, inform the complainant. This preliminary inquiry, the objective of preliminary inquiry is very specific, very small, just to ascertain whether it's a cognizable offense or not to ascertain the veracity of the information. Because in order to ascertain the veracity of the information, it's important that you please investigate the offense and then decide whether the information given was right or not, or if the it was a false information provided by the informant. So only a limited purpose, that just to ascertain whether it's a cognizable or a non-cognizable offense. Secondly, time-bound preliminary inquiry, and in some cases, Supreme Court has said that you should do preliminary inquiry, for instance, in cases of corruption cases, Prevention of Corruption Act, or corruption cases, say, matrimonial matters, medical negligence, etc., etc. In some cases, you must do some preliminary inquiry. So this is what the Supreme Court held in Lalita Kumari. Again, you must go and read each and every sentence of Lalita Kumari. You will have to read it 100 times during your practice. Yes.
Yes. So also the important thing was, even the preliminary inquiry should be limited to ascertaining whether the offense is cognizable or not, and not into the merits of the case itself, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
So
moving.
yes, Kailash, before we move on to the next topic, Kirti Vashisht, you may just show that on the screen, the citation of Kirti Vashisht. Again, this is a very important recent judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court. Yes, very important judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court, and we'll share these slides and citations with you later on. So you stay tuned. So Kirti Vashisht, an important why this judgment came, because normally what happens is in your practice, and even if you, let's say, are a complainant, when you go to the police will not directly register a first information report, and will uh, uh, mm, try to give you reasons for not registering a first information report. Couple of reasons would be there. One, police will always say that this particular offense has not been committed in our jurisdiction. So everyone knows, I'm assuming everyone knows, that every thana, every police station in a district, or or possibly, if we call it a state, in every district there are number of police stations, local thanas. Every local thana would cater to a specific jurisdiction. So when you go to a police station and you tell them that a particular offense has taken place, then the police in some of the cases would tell you that please you go to that specific thana, because this is not an offense which falls in our jurisdiction. So these cases, when came to light, and and subsequently when these informants, complainants, or possibly the accused also in some cases, uh, uh, when they approached the high courts, or when they approached the Honorable Delhi High Court gave some directions. I mean, Kailash would tell those two directions, very important directions.
Right. So before going to the directions, I'll just give you a brief background of what zero FIR is. It's similar to the ordinary FIR. It's only that its serial number would be zero or null, because it would be filed in a police station that doesn't have a jurisdiction over the matter. But as a concept, the police has to register the FIR and later on transfer it to the police station having competent jurisdiction. So the example that we can refer to was one of the cases wherein the case of Asaram Bapu, where a minor girl was raped in Jodhpur, Rajasthan, but the victim filed zero FIR against him in Delhi. So it was a different place from from the area where the incident occurred, or the police station that had jurisdiction over the matter. Also, to give you a brief background about how it came up, the provision of zero FIR came up as a recommendation in the Justice Parma Committee report in the new Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, after the Nirbhaya case of December 2012. So the provision says zero FIR can be filed in any police station by the victim, irrespective of their residence or the place of occurrence of time. So an important concept, because in this particular case, what happened was it was related to property related case, forgery case, wherein the applicant tried to file FIR in multiple police station, but for some reason the police did not entertain and did not register an FIR. So citing this, the Delhi High Court observed certain things. So it said, as per section 154 CRPC, if any information relating to the commission of a cognizable offense is received by any police station, the said police station is duty bound to register the FIR. However, if the crime has not occurred in the jurisdiction of the said police station, then after filing the zero FIR, the same has to be transferred to the concerned police station for investigation where the offense has been committed. So a zero FIR can be filed in any police station by the victim, irrespective of their residence or the place of occurrence of crime. So it also directed, the Commissioner of Police Delhi to issue circular or standing orders to all the police station in NCT of Delhi and concerned that if complaint of cognizable offense is received in a police station, an offense occurred in jurisdiction of other police station, in that case, the zero FIR shall be lodged by the police station which has received the complaint, and thereafter it shall transfer to the concerned police station.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So, Kailash, what's the next topic? So, I'm extremely sorry that we'll have to, because we have to cover a lot of ground.
Right.
So we'll be slightly fast, as in we have to cover a lot of topics. But I'll ensure that you get this video and you can go through the video again and again so that you understand the concept. So TT Anthony is also an important topic, and it talks about the concept of second FIR, whether a second FIR is permissible or not. Now, citation is before you, 2001 6 SCC 181. It's a Supreme Court judgment, very important judgment. Subsequently, there have been references to TT Anthony, and there are other judgments also. There's a recent judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court. I would try to give you the citations, and there has been a slight different interpretation, I would say, but that judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court does not, I would say, set aside, because it can't do that. This is Supreme Court and that's Delhi High Court. But there's a slight variation in the concept of two FIRs or multiple FIRs. You must read that judgment. I'll again not go into that judgment because I'm sure there are a lot of other important concepts in that judgment which you must know. So let's come to the topic of second FIR. Yes, TT Anthony versus State of Kerala. Now, in this case, the facts were, again, a very simplified statement of facts. Some FIRs were registered in this case, and the question, multiple FIRs, of course, and the question before the court was whether second FIR is permissible and under what circumstances. So the topic is whether, or the question of law before the Honorable Supreme Court was whether second FIR is permissible and under what circumstances. Now, what the Supreme Court held. Now, this is important. You may note it down as well. The Supreme Court said that any receipt of a subsequent information, let's say if you have already registered a first information report, given information to the police, and the police has registered a first information report, has registered a first FIR under section 154, any subsequent information with respect to the same incident will not allow the police to register a second FIR. So any subsequent information given to the police will not become a second FIR because you've already given an information to the police. And under what circumstances it will not be permissible? If it relates to the same transaction. Second information. If the second information relates to the same incident, if the second information relates to different offenses, but committed in the course of the same transaction. Different offenses committed in the course of same transaction. So in these cases, there will not be any second FIR. If there is a second FIR, it is liable to be quashed. Now, couple of important points, very important point, I would say. First information report means first information to the police. First information to the police with respect to the incident. So there cannot be two first informations, right?
Right.
So any subsequent information which you give to the police. So again, you have to understand the logical concept or the concept of FIR. It's the starting point. Police will have to do lot of things once investigation takes place. Police may add accused. Police may collect more evidence. Police may add sections. Police may subtract sections. So police will now go through that entire process of investigation and then see entire process of investigation, and then we'll see that these people have to be put on trial. So any subsequent information which you give to the police will not become the first information, and these subsequent informations will become statements to the police. Let's say if I tomorrow go to the police, I will tell the police that, oh, I saw this person. Police can take my statement, and this statement will become a part of that investigation, the original investigation. Second FIR is not envisaged in the court. Then you will also have to understand police has only a limited information which requires investigation in the FIR the first time. So when you go to the police, you only tell the police what you know. You have not investigated. You just simply went to the police. So when police starts with an FIR, it has only a limited information. So police will have to work on that information. And more information would, of course, come with the statements, collection of material, etc., etc. And if police is not satisfied, of course, it can further investigate. Now I'll come to that further investigation also later. And what is the repercussion if you have two FIRs? Two proceedings will go on against the same incident, against the accused with respect to the same incident. I mean,
Right.
important part is that I always believe that whenever you are understanding criminal procedure, you have to understand your Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which says that it guarantees right to life and liberty, personal freedom, which can be taken away only after a procedure established by law. You cannot prejudice anyone during a criminal proceeding. So Article 21 will come into play. If you have two FIRs, two investigating officers doing parallel work and possibly, collecting different materials. So one investigating officer will be collecting this material, the other officer will be collecting something which is opposite to what the first one is doing. So you will have conflicting final reports. You may have conflicting opinions by the investigating officer. The court wants to avoid that. So finally, the conclusion is second FIR is not permissible if the second information pertains to the same incident, same offense, different offenses in the same transaction. So you can't do that. Law is very clear. Now a question for you which you can research. There's a recent case of multiple FIRs being registered against journalists. Go and research. Go and read the facts of the case, and then the matter went to the Honorable Supreme Court. Try to sort of relate to what TT Anthony says, and then you may come up with your own understanding of the second FIR. Yes. Which is the next topic?
So next one we have, the next topic we have is Sakiri Basu versus State.
Yes, Sakiri Basu. Should I say just 10 seconds?
Yeah, sure. You can.
Yes, Sakiri Basu becomes important,
right,
because it introduces to the law students, practitioners, the aspect of section 156(3) and the role of the magistrate, starting an investigation and also during the investigation. Let's yes, Kailash.
Yeah, so it also talks about the how writ is a extraordinary power of the court, and should not be resorted to until the alternate remedies available under the law are exhausted. So it basically talks about that. So in Sakiri Vasui, just give me a moment. So it was about a matter involving when the son of a appellant was a major in the army, when his dead body was found at Mathura railway station. So it was more about trusting the investigation process and all. So it also talks about theory of implied powers, wherein the magistrate has certain powers. It expands that power. The court basically says, once an investigation is started, or there is a certain procedure started by provided by law, you should go through that process, and you cannot directly come up you directly cannot come up to a higher jurisdiction for a different kind of demand, or requesting the, for example, filing a writ to the high court saying a different agency should investigate the matter. So this is in this particular case, the court held, if a person has a grievance, that FIR has not been registered. So again, it talks about FIR, uh, has not been registered by the police. The first remedy, the first process is to approach the superintendent of police under section 154(3) CRPC, or other police officer referred to in section 36 of CRPC. So if despite approaching the superintendent of police or other officers under section 36, and if his grievance still persists, then he can approach a magistrate under section 156(3) of CRPC, instead of rushing to the High Court by way of writ petition or a petition under section 482 of CRPC. So moreover, he has a further remedy of filing a criminal complaint under section 200 CRPC. So why then such should the question, the court also question, when you have certain, multiple options to address the grievances, and you have certain resorts, why then should writ petitions or section 482 petitions be entertained when there are so many alternative remedies? And it also further held that the magistrate has very wide powers, even to direct, the powers involved directing registration of FIR, and to ensure a proper investigation, right? The magistrate himself cannot conduct the investigation, but he has the power to ensure that a proper investigation has been conducted, and for this purpose he can monitor the investigation to ensure that the investigation is done properly. And the High Court should discourage the practice of filing a writ petition or petition under section 482 CRPC simply because a person has a grievance, that is, FIR has not been registered or by police, or even after being registered, proper investigation has not been done by the police. So for this grievance, the remedy lies under section 36 and 154(3) before the concerned police officers. And if that is to no avail, then again, you can approach the magistrate magistrate under section 156(3). And one should not resort the methods of filing writ petitions, which is an extraordinary jurisdiction of the court, when you have other alternative remedies available. So it is true that alternative remedies is not an absolute bar to a writ petition, but it is equally well settled that if there is an alternative remedy, the High Court should not ordinarily interfere. So that's the basic.
Yes. Yes. Kailash, may I say a couple of things?
Sure.
I mean, these things you may not find normally in the books. Very important part: you approach the police station under section 154. If your information discloses a cognizable offense, police has to register an FIR. If it does not register an FIR, there is a provision in section 154(3). Go and read that in section, a clause 154(3, that if the police station does not register a first information report, you please approach the SP or the DCP. And then if even after that there is no FIR, then you approach the magistrate under section 156(3) of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Couple of very important points I must tell you, that 156(3) is one of the most important topics for pre-trial practice. I'm saying most important. You use 156(3) for three reasons now, as of today. I mean, there has been a recent development. The first one, you want to register a first information report, you use 156(3). You move an application under section 156(3) of the code, approach the magistrate for direction to the Thana to register a first information report, number one. Secondly, you move a 156.3 application for ensuring proper investigation. So you move an application, draft an application, go before the magistrate, tell the magistrate that these are the things which investigating officer is not considering, and the investigation has to take into consideration these important material, etc., and there's not proper investigation. 156.3 for second reason. Third, a recent development, 156.3 you can use for directing further investigation. So I'll come to the concept of further investigation later on. So three aspects: for registration of FIR, initiating criminal machinery; second, ensuring proper investigation; third, for further investigation. So these three aspects. I mean, this is the I would say no one will be able to simplify it to this much. So theory of implied was the Supreme Court said that magistrate not only has the power to give directions to the Thana to register a first information report, but also to ensure proper investigation. And you will if you read 156.3, it's just a one-line sentence, but
Right.
it read the Honorable Supreme Court read theory of implied powers into 156.3 to say that where an act confers a jurisdiction to do something, it will give you all the incidental implied powers to ensure that it's executed as well properly. So execution will happen how? If the magistrate has the power to ensure proper investigation. And in fact, magistrates regularly pass so many orders to ensure proper investigation. In many cases, I've done that in lot many times. I move my 156.3 to ensure that these reliefs have to be there, proper investigation has to be there, etc., etc. I can have a different lecture on that, but
Right.
that's a separate topic for discussion. Yes.
So I
So
think to
yes.
next.
So just a small last line that in 156.3, magistrate has the supervisory role and to
Right.
ensure proper supervisory role. The word is important. Yes.
And
So with
also the important aspect is like especially for young lawyers who rush to file writ petitions and all those things. So it might be you should consider this, that when you have it's a established principle of law that when you have alternate remedies available and powers given to a certain authority,
yes,
writ jurisdictions should not
should
be
not be any. Yes.
utilized. Yeah.
So yes. Which is the next judgment, Kailash?
Yeah. So next one is Priyanka Srivastava versus.
Priyanka Srivastava, yes.
Right.
Very quickly, Priyanka Srivastava, again, very important judgment. I mean, these are the judgment which you must read. I mean, as a starting point, I would say, I'll not say that once you read these 10 judgments, 9 judgments, you will be the best criminal lawyer. I mean, that won't happen. Of course, it will take a lot of effort. So, Priyanka Srivastava, very quickly, in this case, some frivolous cases were filed by the respondents and some complaints were also filed. Court held, now the important part is frivolous. Court held that whenever you move a 156.3 application for registration of FIR, now in this case some FIRs were registered under 156.3. Court said that your applications under 156.3 should be accompanied by your affidavit. So that would make you more responsible. You will not make wild allegations. You will not say anything and everything. If it's supported by an affidavit, it will make you more responsible. Learned magistrate through this affidavit and otherwise will be able to verify the truth of the allegations. Of course, it will make you more responsible.
Right.
And it again iterated, which I've just said, that before coming to the magistrate, you must have approached your Thana and then the SP or the DCP and then come to the magistrate. So you will have to make an averment in your 156.3 application that I went to so and so Thana, but FIR was not registered. Then I went to the concerned DCP, FIR was not registered, and then I've come here before your lordship, before this honorable court for registration of the FIR because I have this remedy under the code. So, and if you file a false affidavit in support of your 156.3, you are liable for prosecution. Yes, very simple. Priyanka Srivastava, couple of directions. These, if you go through these directions. That's what Priyanka Srivastava is. Of course, you'll go through the facts of. Yes, yes, Vinay Tyagi versus Irshad. So, as mentioned, you will see it talks about three types of investigation. Of course, there are other aspects also. So, talk about these three things because other topics are included in other judgments or topics.
Right.
So, let me come to that. So, there are a couple of important points in uh, three types of investigations. Number one, initial investigation. So, the court herein talked about three kinds of investigation. So, initial investigation is what? Initial investigation is when you for the first time, approach the police, an FIR gets registered, and investigation ensues. So, this is your first investigation or the initial investigation. Important part is that there is no charge sheet here. So, investigation has now just begun. You have your FIR, investigation has just begun. So, the period from filing of the FIR till the submission of the final report, closure report, challan, etc., under section 173 is your initial report. No charge sheet has been filed in that period. This is your initial period. There is no charge sheet. Second point is uh, further investigation, right? I'll come to further investigation later on, but I'll just give a brief overview what further investigation is. Once the police files that charge sheet, once that police files that charge sheet, any investigation after filing of the charge sheet is further investigation. So there is already a charge sheet filed. In initial, no charge sheet. In further investigation, a charge sheet has already been filed. Any investigation post submission of the charge sheet is your further investigation. I'll come to different aspects of further investigation later on in other judgments. Then you have the fresh investigation or the de novo investigation or re-investigation. In all these cases, if you closely see, re-investigation fresh or de novo means that the court will first set aside the existing investigation and then order the agency to again investigate. Right? So this is re-investigation. Why will the court do? Important question. Court will order re-investigation, de novo investigation, or fresh investigation in cases where the present investigation is ex specie mala fide. There, there is corruption in the defective investigation. Police has not done anything. So police, the court will decide, of course. I mean, in rarest of rare cases, it's not that every day you will go to the court and will give you a fresh investigation and you come out like a very big lawyer and tell everyone that yes, I can get you this thing done. So court will decide on the facts and circumstances of the case. And yes, in this case, fresh investigation has to be there. Rarest of rare cases, and in most of the cases, when the court, the honorable courts direct fresh investigation, they will also change the investigating agency. Because if the earlier investigating agency has not done anything, why will you entrust it to the same agency? So either the court will say, let me give it to a special investigation team or a senior officer of the same agency, or possibly change the agency only. So many a times you will have in these cases transfer or order of fresh investigation from your police, local police, to let's say CBI or crime branch, etc., etc. So fresh investigation. Now, second question: who can do that? Magistrate cannot do this. Only High Court will do it, and High Court can do it. So if you want fresh investigation, just see if your facts demand fresh investigation. Secondly, file a writ petition or a 482 before the Honorable High Court, because these are the inherent powers of the Honorable High Courts. Again, Article 21 will come into play. Fresh investigation, court will decide and then give it for a fresh investigation. So you have three kinds of investigation: initial, further, and then fresh. Only High Court can do fresh. Yes. Right. Next topic. Yes, Vinu Bhai, Hari Bhai Malviya. Again, very important topic, since I've already I already told you about further investigation. Let me just come to Vinubhai Malviya. Yes. So now this is very important question. Just came 2019. Everybody should read it. It will resolve most of your queries. And there were some conflicts as far as the issue of further investigation was concerned. So it's a big judgment and possibly written by Justice. Yes, it was written by Justice R.F. Nariman. So one of the brilliant minds in Supreme Court, I would say. You must go through this judgment. Of course, there are some questions which are still unanswered. That's what I feel, because see, judgments cannot resolve all your queries, because India is a very big country. You'll After every few kilometers you have your police changing, investigation, the manner and the method of investigation changes, the crimes change, the language, culture, etc. change. So you cannot have a Supreme Court sitting in Delhi looking after in one particular judgment deciding all the issues. So yes, couple of important points, and the question before the Supreme Court was whether the magistrate order can the magistrate order further investigation after a police report has been filed under section 173. So when you started, I gave you a flow: investigation, submission of the final report, magistrate takes cognizance, issues summons to the accused or issues process, and then charges are framed. So sometimes what happens is, even after cognizance, you feel that there are questions which have to be answered. So in those cases, a question came before the Supreme Court whether a magistrate direct further investigation after taking cognizance, because earlier the view in some of the judgments, in some of the cases before the Supreme Court, was that it cannot do it, and the practice was that if the investigating officer feels that this matter needs further investigation, he can of course take the permission of the court and then further investigate. But if the court wants, court will cannot do it. So Supreme Court was like, I mean, if you're giving so much power to the magistrate, it's really difficult to comprehend why a magistrate cannot order further investigation, but a police person can decide on further investigating this issue. So in that case, important sections, uh, court read or interpreted the interplay of section 173 bracket 8, 173 bracket 8. Read that section. Read with 156.3. Just now you read 156.3. There were
Right.
Sakiri and all those case laws. Interplay of 173.8 and 156.3. Court said, even after cognizance, magistrate can direct further investigation, because Article 21 again will come into play. Yes, magistrate can do it. He can do it suo motu also. He's not bound by your final report. He's not bound by your charge sheet. He can take his own call. If he thinks further investigation, yes. Then it also talked about section 2H of the Code of Criminal Procedure, which defines investigation. Please go and read it. There is a word called all. Court said all would also include further investigations, right? Then if you see 156.3 closely, please go and read it. It talks about the words are such an investigation. Such an investigation includes further investigation. Therefore, it said that please, we don't think magistrate, yes, can order further investigation even after cognizance. So sorry, even if the magistrate has taken cognizance, then also he can order further investigation under section 156.3 read with section 173 bracket 8. That's what Meenu Bhai Malviya is. Very good judgment. I think it solves a lot of problems for me as a criminal lawyer, because I used to face a lot of problems because the judgments were conflicting and all those. Now it has resolved that. I'm happy as far as judgment is. Yes. Like, what's the second next step?
So next is Ravia and others versus NCT Delhi.
Yes. So should I
Yeah,
or
so
you?
I'll just start it. Okay, so it basically talks about this transferring of cases. So ultimately, who can transfer the cases, in case of investigation, because we often hear in the news that certain cases has been transferred to CBI or the central agency, wherein the police could not investigate the matter. So it also relies on the previous judgment of State of West Bengal versus Committee for Protection of Democratic Rights. I think you can see the citation over there, where the constitutional bench of Apex Court had considered whether it was a violation of federal structure of the constitution for a high court or the Supreme Court to order an investigation by the CBI without consent of the state government, which was rejected on that particular case. And it also talks about constitutional and inherent power of the high court to transfer such cases. Again, you have to keep in mind that it's the high court that can do that and not the magistrate. So magistrate, as Avinav have said earlier, it can go for further investigation and other matters, but not for transfer of cases, right? So I think Avinav will add to that.
Yes. So again, I'll again say, whenever you are reading your code of criminal procedure, understand one thing, that the magistrate does not have inherent powers. There is no concept of inherent powers for a magistrate. Very important part. Again and again, you will read it. A magistrate is bound by the code. He cannot go beyond the code, and you cannot read into extraordinary powers for a magistrate. He is bound by it. And in case you feel that the matter needs investigation, sometimes we also feel, for instance, a matter is being investigated, so we also feel that sometimes matters have interstate ramifications. So for instance, the crime has been registered in Delhi, the offense has been registered in Delhi, and but some of the records are in possibly Uttar Pradesh, or some things have to, some statements, some witnesses have to come from Mumbai, etc., etc. There are interstate ramifications. In such cases, we approach the Honorable High Courts and the Supreme Court, because these are the two constitutional courts in our country exercising inherent powers. We approach these courts for seeking investigation to a more specialized agency. So there are some questions. We'll take up those questions also. Three questions have come. Give us some time. Let us complete it. 2 judgments are left. So yes, so we approached the Honorable High Court, and the High Courts have said that we have constitutional powers, we have inherent powers, and again Article 21 comes into play. So we can transfer this case to another agency. We can transfer it to some other specialized agency if the case demands. If the police cannot do it, of course, police is not, see, police can, staying in Delhi, police can also do those things. But sometimes it happens that a more specialized agency is required. For instance, we these days see that a lot of bank frauds have taken place. Bank frauds in these times are largely or generally investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation or the Enforcement Directorate, because some aspects of money laundering are also there. Central Bureau of Investigation will take care of other interstate aspects of investigation and is considered to be a more specialized agency. So sometimes we go approach the high courts for transfer. So court says, again, rarest of rare cases, it's not as if we will come here and we will give you that transfer. We will, on case to case basis, we will see, and if your case demands, we can transfer it to another agency. We are constitutional courts, and we can do that. Yes. So next topic. I think it's S.R. Sukumar, right?
Right.
Yes. If you can share the this thing citation. So S.R. Sukumar versus Sunath Raghuram is important because I just spoke recently of the word cognizance. It's important to understand the meaning of the word cognizance. Again, it's a very wide topic. Some of you will say that we have, from your this discussion, we have not understood how this cognizance thing is related to other aspects. I'll simplify it. Cognizance in very simple terms means taking judicial notice of a matter in order to proceed further in a particular case. So many a times magistrate take cognizance. Please look at your section 190 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, talks about cognizance. Again, I'll not go into these sections and these subsections. Understand the concept, and then you have to research further, because criminal law, that's what I hope will start from this discussion. I mean, your criminal law will start from this discussion. So yes, it's taking judicial notice of matter, court takes cognizance of the offense, not of the offender. Now, this is a conceptual clarity that everyone has to have. Magistrate takes cognizance of the offense, not of the offenders. Secondly, it means taking judicial notice. In this case, what had happened is, now you have to understand what is a complaint. Many a times, so our code of criminal procedure talks about two ways to initiate criminal proceedings. One is your FIR route, the other is your complaints procedure under section 200 chapter 15. Please go read to section 200, 201, 202, 203, 204. At least for these 4 or 5 sections you must go and read. In under complaints procedure, you draft your complaint, you directly approach the magistrate will tell you to come for pre-summoning evidence, take your pre-summoning evidence, and then possibly have a limited investigation under section 202. And then if he feels that the complaint needs to be dismissed, section 203, dismissal of your complaint. Otherwise, section 204, issuing process. He will issue summons process to the accused person. Now, sometimes a lot of lawyers, a lot of people, a lot of us confuse this issue. I also confused it earlier. Now this judgment has come. It has given me some clarity. Again, there are some conflicting judgments. I'm telling you, as far as cognizance is concerned, some people say the moment you file your complaint before the magistrate, the moment you file your complaint and magistrate directs you to come for pre-summoning evidence, the magistrate has taken cognizance. So a lot of people have this confusion that the magistrate has already taken cognizance, but this judgment, you will read that judgment, it says that it does not mean that taking cognizance precedes examination of the complainant, it precedes entertaining the complaint, it precedes examination of the witness. No, cognizance will depend on the facts and circumstances of the case. When during that process, before issuing process, magistrate applies his mind in order to proceed further. That is where cognizance is taken. So in this case, what had happened is that the complaint was filed on 18th May 2007, and cognizance, even an order was the process was issued on 21/6/2007. So the issue came before the Supreme Court that the magistrate had already taken cognizance on 18/5/2007. Now Supreme Court said, and it's very important, Supreme Court said mere presentation of the complaint or mere examination of the complainant does not mean that the magistrate has taken cognizance. Taking cognizance is not defined in the code. You will have to see this judgment, and it cites a lot of other judgments. It means taking judicial notice of the on the complaint, and when the magistrate applies his mind. So questions, again, a question has come. I mean, these are important questions. I'll try to answer. So when the magistrate applies his mind, it's then you say that the magistrate has taken cognizance, and it can happen even after examination. It can even happen after presentation of the complaint. So this is how the magistrate defined cognizance. The Honorable Supreme Court defined cognizance. So very quickly, I think we'll have a couple of minutes, right, Kailash? Or should we? Your voice is not audible, Kailash.
Yeah, so we can extend it for some time, given that we have one more case and we need to discuss certain questions.
Yes.
So I'll go for the final question, the final case, and then we can.
Yes. I'll quickly wrap it up. Don't worry.
Sure.
And I have some questions also. I think I'll try to answer these questions again. I will say again, whatever we have discussed, you try to find out answers for those questions. Again, I'll try to answer, not an issue. So RK Vijay Sarthi, again, very practical and an important question that generally comes up before the courts, wherein, many times complainants try to initiate criminal proceedings, although it's a civil dispute, and they feel that by initiating criminal proceedings, by getting to register a first information report or an FIR, we will be able to pressurize the other side and the other side will then come and settle. So in this case also the same thing happened, and there was a transaction of rupees 20 lakhs between the parties. A suit of recovery was filed, and subsequently after a couple of years, 3 years, a complaint was filed by the other person, saying that there are some offences made out, and he was actually trying to pressurize this person to settle the entire issue. Now the honorable court said, so it talked about the jurisdiction of the high courts under section 482, and it said that high court under section 482 can of course examine whether the dispute is essentially of a civil nature or not. I mean, it can see that by bare reading of the case. It's bare reading of the I would say proceedings, or bare reading of the case before the high court. Court will not go into evidence, court will not go into the material, just a bare reading. If it's a civil offense and the criminal proceedings have been initiated in a malafide manner, the courts can exercise their powers under section 482 and quash the FIR or the criminal proceedings. It can do that, because we cannot allow a civil dispute to become a criminal dispute and the other party using it to pressurize the first party, I would say. So in this case also the criminal complaint was filed after 6 years and after 3 years of the recovery suit. 6 years of the transaction of rupees 20 lakhs and 3 years of the recovery suit. So courts saw some malafide in this and quashed the FIR. Yes. Couple of questions quickly I'll take. Can reinvestigation be done as per Vinu Bhai Malviya's? If you could, Kailash, if you could show me the chats.
I'll read the questions. Okay, so I think we have a question from.
I'll read that. I'll read that. Not an issue.
Okay.
Can reinvestigation be done as per? So I've already discussed that.
I think the same question.
This question was asked at 4. I've already told that reinvestigation powers only High Court has the power, not the magistrate. Right. Can be done as per Vinu Bhai Malviya Supreme Court judgment. See, reinvestigation, you approach the concerned 26. So is a judgment which spoke of 156.3 read with 173.8. Again, I'll say you please go and read the judgment. I mean, see, interpretation of judgment is a very subjective issue. You cannot just rely on my clarifying the issues and say that we've understood the judgment. Please go and read the judgment and you will have all your answers.
Right.
Yes, as per Vinu Bhai Malviya judgment can be done or not, or only for the. So this is, I think, same question. Vivek Muskan has written this. Sir, what if closure report is filed before the magistrate without giving notice to the complainant and FIR is closed as mistaken of fact? What is the remedy for the complainant? So you approach the magistrate, you move an application. Normally it's not done. You will get a notice if you are a complainant or an informant. You will get the notice. Otherwise, the whole procedure gets vitiated. And don't worry, even if you don't get the as a complainant or an informant, I would say, if you know that an FIR has been registered and investigation is going on, and a complaint can be filed, to keep a track of the case. Nowadays we have you can see your this thing online orders are there. Online orders come for the in those cases. You please go and just keep a watch of your case, and if the magistrate closes that complaint, see, the thing is, it's generally not possible, but if it still does, then the whole process gets vitiated. You can actually approach the High Court and say that so and so thing can happen. Even move an application before the magistrate. He cannot do that. Sir, how many times cognizance have been taken in one offense? Cognizance is taken is just. I mean, I've never seen taking of cognizance more than once. It's always taken more just once. Sir, pre-cognizance and post-cognizance. Yes, this is an important question. I would say pre-cognizance and post-cognizance. So whatever happens before cognizance is pre-cognizance. Whatever happens after cognizance is post-cognizance. But yes, I'll very briefly elaborate. I mean, this is a question which has other aspects. a lot of times you have this uh, question coming before the courts, that can a magistrate give direction for registration of the FIR once it has taken cognizance? So many a times, because when you move your application of under 156(3) before the magistrate, what you want from the magistrate? You want registration of FIR. Magistrate in your 156(3) does not take cognizance. It only sees whether your case is fit for investigation or not. If it sees, because see, now there are a lot of judgments, you would say, there are a lot of judgments. I'll see that also. So there are a lot of judgments uh, wherein you will find this thing, that uh, court saying again and again that the 156(3) proceedings are only a reminder for the police to do its job. So what's the job of the police? To register a first information report and investigate. Right? It's not. So when you move a 156(3), magistrate will say, okay, this demands investigation, and I myself under complaints procedure cannot waste my time examining the complainant and the witnesses and then issue process. And sometimes the evidence is not in the possession of the complainant. So for instance, in some of the cases which I've done, you have to call for the bank records, bank statements. The accused is in some other jurisdiction. How, even if I follow complaints procedure, it will be extremely cumbersome. But yes, police can do it. Police can take statements. Police can do all those things. I cannot do it. So under 156(3), it's only a peremptory reminder that police has to do its job. So magistrate will not take cognizance when it directs the police to register a first information report. Right?
Right.
Then, secondly, after investigation, let's say the magistrate has directed the police, and the police registers the first information report, investigates, comes up with a charge sheet, and then files that, submits that final report. On the basis of that final report, the magistrate takes cognizance, and anything which happens after that event is your post cognizance event. Anything which happens before that is your pre-cognizance. So early before this we further investigation, right? Magistrate cannot direct further investigation post cognizance. It cannot revert to a pre-cognizance stage and all those things. So now that position is settled. As far as your thing is concerned, question is concerned, what's pre and post cognizance. I think it clarifies. I mean, I have some 2-3 questions. I mean, let me just Kailash, if we have 2 minutes,
Sure. You can go
because
through.
a lot of people ask this question. I'll try to share a screen with people. I mean, a lot of people wanted to see the structure of FIR. So yes, so FIRs generally are registered. So these are your standard forms. So IIF means integrated investigating forms 1. So this is Roman 1. So this is your first information. So police will fill up all these things under section 154 of CRPC. District police station, year, FIR number, so and so date, under offense under which sections, other acts and sections, occurrence, time period, type of information, written, oral, place of occurrence, address, direction and distance from PS address, complainant's information, details of known suspects. So details of the suspects are there, reasons for delay, if there's any delay, etc. Likewise, you have this form now, investigating forms available after there was a recommendation by some committee which suggested government that these forms have to be brought in so as to simplify procedures. So this is how an information report looks like. So you will have it filled up, of course, and now I'll show you your integrated investigating form 5, which will be the charge sheet or the final report. I'll show that also, because a lot of people ask that. Sorry, I'm going slightly fast, but I'll request you to look at the video again. So this is your form report under section 170 CRPC in IIF Roman 5. So it will be filed in some court, in the court of district, PS, police station, year, FIR number, final report. These are the sections, and then you have your name of the investigating officer. So police will fill up these things. Important part is you call it column 11. Particulars of accused person charge have to be put on trial in the opinion of the investigating officer. Particulars of accused person, so their name, father, husband name, etc. will come. Column 12 again is important. Column 12 is where people not yet but during investigation there will be people who are suspects, who possibly may have a role during investigation. They find that the here, because they would want to investigate now, further investigate, of course. So even after filing this final report, you may have supplementary reports. So many times people call it a first report or an initial report or an interim report or challan, charge sheet, and the other reports, subsequent reports as supplementary reports. So these are the integrated investigating forms. You have a lot of NCR. I mean, these are all standard forms. This is for the FIR. Now, I have a very small research kind of thing for you, because I want that you people should also, whatever little learned, you should also do some. Yes, am I audible, Kailash?
Yeah, you are audible. Yeah.
Yes, if you could show that research to, on the screen.
Yeah, sure.
Some points, very important, quick points.
Yeah, so here are some of the points that we have, identified for further research.